I still can't fully explain what I saw on the security camera footage that spring morning. Cherry blossom petals danced in the air, and a white gorilla moved with a singular purpose. He unlocked a lock, something he hadn't done in years, all to reach an elderly woman in a wheelchair. It was miraculous, proof that love and memory know no boundaries. The security teams were ready to fire, but Kesi, that magnificent gorilla, had only one goal, a goal more valuable than anything else in the world. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How could a gorilla remember something from so long ago? How could he be so gentle, despite his immense strength? And how could he form such a deep connection with a human? The answers, I discovered, lie in the story of a bond that even science struggles to explain. It all began with Emma Carter, a woman who dedicated 42 years of her life to working with primates, showing them a level of compassion that, sadly, isn't always present in our own species. But nothing in her life was as significant as the night she raided that laboratory. It was a turning point, not just for her, but for a 5-month-old white baby gorilla as well. The year was 2006, and genetic engineering experiments were gaining momentum, often shrouded in controversy. Emma, working for a private animal rights organization, had been watching a particular laboratory for months, her suspicions growing with each passing day. As the months passed, their bond grew stronger. As Kesi grew, his white fur seemed to shine even brighter. But it wasn't just his physical development that was remarkable. His intelligence, his ability to empathize, and his loving gaze amazed everyone. It was as if he was now receiving back all the love he had lost in that cold laboratory cell, multiplied tenfold. By the time he turned 3, Kesi was already too big to climb on Emma's shoulder. But he still came to her side every morning, resting his huge head on her knees, waiting for her hands to wander through his fur. This ritual was sacred to Emma, a time for a silent conversation they both shared. Emma taught Kesi simple things: how to peel fruit, how to play games, even how to open a simple lock. She had shown him this last skill as a fun activity: a metal lock, small buttons turned in the right sequence. Kesi thought it was a game, but it was actually one of the most important gifts Emma had given him: the ability to understand the idea of freedom. Years passed. When Kesi turned 10, he already weighed over 200 kilos. His white fur literally glowed in the sunlight, while his amber eyes held a deep wisdom. Emma could no longer keep him at home. It would be dangerous and wrong. But the solution she found was the best for him. The local rehabilitation center agreed to accept Kesi. This was a professional facility designed for injured animals in need of protection, with large areas where Kesi would be safe, cared for by experts, and able to move freely. The day she took him there, Emma felt something tear inside her. Kesi looked at her, an understanding in those big eyes, as if he knew, as if he understood that Emma thought this was best for him. And as she left him, Emma stroked his head one last time, whispered in his ear, "I will always love you, Kesi. You're my son." And Kesi touched Emma's face one last time. Those giant fingers touched hers as if making a promise that he would never forget her. After that day, Emma visited him every week. According to the center's rules, she couldn't make direct contact, but just watching him from behind the bars was enough. Every time Kesi saw her, he would stand up, place his hands on the bars, and look at her. It was as if he was speaking, saying, "Mum, you're here. Everything is." But time was merciless, especially toward Emma. When she reached 65, I remember reading about a woman named Emma and the merciless progression of her illness. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, they called it. Motor neuron disease. Her body began to betray her, strength leaving her legs, hands trembling. Within a year, she was confined to a wheelchair, her speech slurred, each word a struggle. But her mind, her feelings, remained sharp, deep. That, I think, must have been the most painful imprisonment of all. Visiting Kesi, her son, was no longer possible. Her health simply wouldn't allow it. Months passed, and the absence consumed her. She knew her time was running short, and she desperately wanted to see him just one last time. Her sister Sarah understood. She contacted the Rehabilitation Center, secured special permission, and one spring morning, amidst dancing cherry blossoms, she wheeled Emma into the center. People stared, pity in their eyes, but Emma noticed none of it. Her attention was fixed on a distant figure, Kesi, standing like a white giant in a large outdoor area. As Sarah pushed the wheelchair toward the garden, the spring sun warmed Emma's face, cherry blossoms landing softly in her hair. But all she wanted was to see him. They stopped just before the bars. Kesi had his back turned, sitting on a large rock. Emma tried to call out, but only rasping sounds escaped her lips. Tears streamed down her face. To be so close, and yet unable to reach him, was unbearable. Sarah touched her shoulder. "Let me call him," she whispered. But at that moment, as if by a miracle, Kesi turned his head. Perhaps he felt the vibration of her sounds, or maybe instinct whispered in his ear. But when that huge head turned, his amber eyes found Emma. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. Kesi's eyes locked onto hers, and in that moment, all the noise in the world faded away. There was only the woman and the gorilla. Mother and son, reunited after years. Slowly, Kesi stood. His massive body, all 210 kilograms, moved with a strange grace. Purpose filled each step as he walked toward the bars. He remembered her. Reaching the bars, he stopped, gripping the cold metal, his head bowed, his eyes never leaving Emma. Then he made a sound, a deep, human-like sound, as if in pain. It was one of those characteristic sounds gorillas make when they are sad. Sarah brought the chair closer, until only a meter separated them. The bars were the only barrier. Emma tried to reach out with her trembling hand, but she lacked the strength. Understanding, Kesi extended his own giant hand through the bars. His fingers touched hers. That touch was like electricity. 10 years since she had truly touched him. And now those giant fingers intertwined with hers, warm, soft, familiar. Kesi's fingers began to tremble. Was he crying? Could gorillas cry? Emma didn't know. But in that moment, she knew they were both feeling the same pain. A word fell from her mouth. Kai. That huge head bowed further, leaning against the bars as if trying to hug Emma. And then something strange happened. Kesi pulled his hand back, turned his head slightly, examined the lock on the edge of the bars, and took action. It was that simple lock mechanism Emma had taught him as a game years ago. 3 buttons, turned in a specific sequence, would open it. A simple but effective system designed to prevent accidental openings. But Kesi remembered. He turned the first button right, the second left, the third right. A click echoed. The lock was open. Sarah gasped. "Oh my God," she whispered. Center security guards, noticing the situation on the monitors, panicked. The alarm blared, but Emma felt no fear. She was looking into Kesi's eyes, and there was no danger there. Only love. Kesi slowly pushed the door open. The metal bars creaked, and that giant gorilla, for the first time in 10 years, stepped outside freely. Security teams came running, tranquilizer darts and guns in hand. "Get back," someone shouted. "The animal has gotten loose." But Kesi didn't even glance at them. He only looked at Emma, and with slow, careful steps, as if approaching something breakable, he moved toward her. Sarah stood frozen behind the chair, unable to move. Emma tried to signal with her hand, letting out a difficult, "Let him." Sarah hadn't understood. "What?" Emma repeated. "Let him." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She didn't want to leave her sister alone with this giant animal. But seeing the determination in Emma's eyes, she slowly backed away. One of the security team members shouted, "No, get away from there. This is very dangerous." I've always been drawn to those moments that defy easy explanation, the connections that seem to transcend the boundaries we often take for granted. The meeting between Emma and Kesi was one such moment. A gorilla, a woman, and something deeper, a bond of love that seemed to disregard the very notion of species. It was a meeting of souls, a farewell after years, a mother and son reunited. Sarah, ever watchful, had to tell everyone to just wait. Kesi, this massive gorilla, stood before Emma, sunlight catching his white fur like a halo. Slowly, gently, he crouched, bringing his face almost level with hers. His hand, so immense, reached out and touched her face with a tenderness that belied his size. He caressed her cheek, picked a cherry blossom petal from her hair, examined it with care, and then placed it softly on the ground. Then he rested his great head on Emma's knees. Everyone stopped. Security, visitors, staff, all held their breath. This wasn't just animal behavior. It was something far more profound. Emma raised a trembling hand, feeling the soft, warm fur of Kesi's head. Tears streamed down her face, but they were no longer tears of pain, but of pure gratitude. Kesi made a soft whimpering sound, the kind gorillas make only in moments of deep emotion. It was as if he were saying, "Mum, you're here. I missed you. I never forgot you." And then Emma spoke, her voice strained but filled with love. "I love you, Kesi." He looked up at her, his amber eyes filled with understanding, acceptance. He knew, somehow, that their time was short. His hand reached for the armrest of her wheelchair, examining the metal edge with a delicate care. He then placed his hand on hers. In that moment, under the falling cherry blossoms, their hands joined. Emma understood. He was being careful not to hurt her. He sensed her fragility and wanted to protect her. Minutes drifted by, undisturbed. The security teams lowered their weapons. They saw not a threat, but love. Dr. Alan Thompson, the center's director, stepped forward, his eyes filled with tears. He had worked with animals for years, but had never seen anything like this. "The most extraordinary thing I've ever witnessed," he said, his voice trembling. This is something even science can't explain." Sarah wept. Others silently shed tears. They understood this wasn't just about a woman and a gorilla. It was a universal bond, a mother's love for her child, transcending species, time, and distance. Kesi lifted his head, looked at Emma one last time, and then, with a gesture so human, wiped the tears from her eyes. Compassion, protection, love, it was all there. Emma longed to express her feelings, but words seemed inadequate. Yet Kesi understood. "You are my son," she said, with all her remaining strength. Kesi rested his head on her knees once more. They both knew this wasn't goodbye, but a moment of gratitude for the precious gift they were to each other. Cherry blossoms continued to fall, pink petals on white fur, the sun shining. Everything felt perfect. As the day moved toward noon, Kesi remained by Emma's side. Finally, Dr. Thompson approached with a basket of Kesi's favorite fruits. "Kesi," he said softly, "come on, buddy. Let Emma rest." Kesi looked at the doctor, then back at Emma, hesitation in his eyes. He seemed to sense that leaving her meant never seeing her again. And perhaps he was right. Emma, gathering her strength, gently pushed him away. "Go," she whispered. "Be well." Kesi placed his hand on Emma's one last time, holding it tightly, as if trying to transfer all his love through that touch. He slowly stood, his eyes fixed on her. He took a few steps back, then turned for one final look. In that look was everything: gratitude, love, farewell, and a silent promise never to forget. Dr. Thompson guided Kesi back inside. He wasn't interested in the fruit, only in Emma. Even as he walked away, his head remained turned, his eyes locked on her. When the door closed, he stood there, leaning against the bars, motionless, silent, watching Emma. Sarah moved behind the wheelchair. "Should we go?" she asked, her voice trembling. Emma nodded. It was time. But something wasn't breaking. It was solidifying. I'll never forget the story of Kesi. It's a story of a bond that defied everything. A gorilla and a woman, connected by something deeper than blood. A love that transcended species. It reminds me that the most profound connections can arise in the most unexpected places. The day Emma brought Kesi to the center was, in a way, a farewell. A real farewell that they both understood. As the chair turned, Kesi made a sound, a long, pain-filled call. The kind gorillas reserve for the most profound moments, like a mother's or son's call. The people around them, still moved by the moment, silently made way as they moved towards the exit. Some were crying. Others simply looked on in shock. It wasn't normal animal behavior. It felt like a miracle. Back home, Sarah made tea for Emma, but she couldn't bring herself to drink it. She felt empty, as if a part of her remained with Kesi. That night, lying in bed, she thought back to when she first saw Kesi, that tiny white infant, and the promise she made as she held him in her arms. "I will protect you. I will love you." A promise she kept every day, every moment, doing what was best for Kesi. Days turned into weeks. Sarah brought news of Kesi, saying he was doing well, but she didn't mention that every evening at sunset, Kesi would come to the bars and look at the last place Emma had stood. 2 months later, Emma woke up struggling to breathe. The disease was progressing. She refused to go to the hospital, wanting to be at home in peace. That night, as she lay in bed, she looked out the window at the full moon, its white light filling the room. a strange feeling washed over her, as if Kesi were beside her, his giant hand touching hers once more. She closed her eyes and imagined him, his white fur, amber eyes, and gentle hands. She imagined that last perfect day, cherry blossoms dancing in the air, the sun illuminating everything. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "Thank you for letting me love you, Kesi." And she fell asleep in peace. The next morning, Sarah couldn't wake her. Emma was gone, but there was a smile on her face, a peaceful, happy expression, as if she had seen a beautiful dream. Dr. Thompson cried when he heard the news. Emma had not only saved an animal's life, but given him a loving, meaningful one. How would they tell Kesi? How do you tell a gorilla that the person he loved most has died? But Kesi already knew. That morning, he didn't come to the bars as usual, breaking his routine for the first time in days. He simply sat in the farthest corner of his area, head bowed, motionless, as if mourning. Dr. Thompson asked Sarah for Emma's favorite shawl and left it in Kesi's area one morning in the early hours. When Kesi saw it, he froze. He approached, smelled it, and his giant body trembled. He grasped the shawl, brought it to his face, and smelled it for a long, long time. It was Emma's scent, lavender and daisy. He had never forgotten it. He gently pressed the shawl to his chest, bowed his head. From that day on, Kesi slept with that shawl every night, taking it with him in the morning, protecting it as if it were a treasure, his way of maintaining his connection with Emma. Months passed, and Kesi slowly returned to normal. He ate, he played, he lived. But every evening at sunset, he would take that shawl with him and come to the bars, sitting there, waiting. Perhaps, in a way, Emma was always there, in every cherry blossom petal, in every ray of sunlight. Emma was in Kesi's heart, just as Kesi was in Emma's heart. A year later, the Rehabilitation Centre erected a special monument in Emma's memory, made of white marble. A small but meaningful monument with a figure of a woman and a gorilla hand in hand. Underneath was an Indian. Emma Carter, 1964 to 2026, she taught that love knows no language, species, or barrier. Sarah was there on the day of the unveiling, and Kesi was there too, watching silently from behind the bars. When the ceremony ended, Sarah went to Kesi's side and looked at him. His amber eyes gave her a sad but grateful look. "You loved my sister very much, didn't you?" she said with tears. Kesi bowed his head slightly, as if confirming. "She loved you very much too," Sarah said. "Know that." Kesi made a strange sound, soft, sweet, and sad, one of those rare sounds with which gorillas express their deepest feelings. Years passed. Kesi lived a long and happy life. Grey strands appeared among his white fur, but that sparkle in his eyes never disappeared, and he carried Emma's shawl with him until he died. One autumn morning, Kesi peacefully passed away. Veterinarians said his heart had stopped, but caretakers said something else. He finally went to be with Emma. They buried Kesi right next to Emma's monument and wrote on it, "Kesi, 2006 to 2023. He knew what love was, and he never forgot it." That night, the full moon illuminated both graves. Emma and Kesi, mother and son, two souls, finally together again. And even though it wasn't the season, you could see cherry blossom petals dancing in the wind, as if Emma and Kesi were somehow still showing their love. It's strange how a simple story can stay with you, isn't it? The thought of two souls intertwined, even across the vastness of time. I find myself pondering that connection long after the tale is done. I suppose that's where their story ends, the two of them together.